Thank you so much for more.
Oh, no problem. I need more.
I feel so bad.
More.
Hey everyone, this is Josh from Denver Startup Week. We may be having some issues with audio. We apologize. We are gonna give this a shot. And Wendy, if you can hear me, if you turn your mic on and let me know if you can hear this video as we move forward, because I don't want to go through play it if it's not working.
Okay.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Well, thank you. And my name is Wendy Wempy. I'm founder and executive director of STEM Generation. So today I'm going to be talking to you about Denver STEM education and workforce paradox behind the scenes. So if you're a parent or if you've been around parents as an adult, then you probably know that.
Wendy, can you hear that okay?
I can hear it. Yep, I can hear it.
Okay, well then we're gonna go ahead and finish playing through this. And so everybody knows, we pre-recorded this session with Wendy so that she could answer any of your questions while you're watching this live in the chat. So feel free to ask Wendy any questions you have about her content. And we'll continue from here. Thanks, guys.
The deep-seated desire to give your child the very best opportunities to thrive as you can. I'm a parent and I totally get it. I essentially created a whole thesis around improving my kids' elementary school science and engineering fair. What I didn't get though was that by limiting my support to my children's school, I was contributing to the systemic inequities in early learning opportunities that fall squarely along socioeconomic lines. And this is throughout the entire United States. Colorado children, in particular Denver metro children from low-income communities, experience these inequities firsthand. So my goal here today is to empower you to become part of the equity solution by following 3 practical tips that I have learned through my own experience. So before I dive into those tips, I just like to clearly outline the problem as I've experienced it. So after laying the foundation for a fun and inclusive science and engineering fair at my kids' public elementary school, a teacher from a nearby Title I school, which is a high needs, low resource school, reached out to me to ask for my help to see if I could reproduce that experience at her school. So I reworked all the materials and essentially gave the whole school a science fair in a box with all supporting materials and resources for students, teachers, and parents, so that those students could lead their own learning through their science and engineering projects, in those projects that are based on things in their everyday lives. So now, the very first time I met with this teacher, the gap in resources and opportunities that these children living in lower income communities that they experienced were absolutely obvious. These students didn't have smart boards, they didn't have a STEM lab, nor did they have all the extracurricular activities that children from my kids' school had right at their fingertips. Both schools are public schools. Both schools were filled with the same talent and the same potential. But the children at my kids' school had just so many more opportunities to engage in learning. So 2 weeks after the school's highly successful science and engineering fair that I helped to organize, the teacher I supported reached out to me to share a story. She had explained that her most at-risk student had come to her the next morning after the fair to share that he had decided he was going to be an engineer when he grew up. He totally changed his behavior in class. He was focused, he was dedicated to his learning, he had found something within himself that he never was aware of. He experienced this with his science and engineering fair project, and this completely changed his life. He knew he could be part of the tech pipeline, something that he never knew was within reach. Now, let's put that experience into numbers. Last academic year, 69% of Denver public school children were living in poverty. They qualify for the federal free and reduced lunch program. So again, nearly 70% of DPS children live in poverty. So looking around Denver, you might not ever know it until you go beyond your immediate neighborhoods. So the final number that I'm going to throw your direction is this. In the United States, by 6th grade, these students who qualify for the free and reduced lunch program will have had on the order of 6,000 fewer hours of learning than their peers. Now that's equivalent to approximately 5.5 formal education years. Over 4,200 of those hours come in through out-of-class opportunities during elementary school, like summer camp, enrichment programs, and after-school programs. In Colorado alone, that amounts to on the order of 2.2 billion hour gap in learning by 6th grade. So what's this specifically have to do with Denver Metro's strong tech and engineering business sectors? Well, The choice for our youth to enter those career pipelines start in elementary school. Students, particularly girls, begin to shape their identities as capable or incapable in STEM, for science, technology, engineering, math, as early as 2nd and 3rd grade. By the time they get to the end of middle school, those identities of being capable or incapable to enter that tech and engineering pipeline are solidified. And now, compounding all of this is COVID-19. COVID-19 and its effects have had a disproportionate impact on students from low-income communities. So if we want to create a more skilled and innovative workforce in Colorado, one way to do that is to create a more diverse workforce by creating more equitable learning opportunities for children from low-income communities, starting as early as elementary school. Now for a few practical tips for you to be part of the equity solution. The first tip is if you're a community leader from the tech or engineering sector or recently seeking new opportunities, then advocate with your company or potential new company to make a difference. As one of the sponsors of our programming shared with me, the #1 question we are guaranteed to be asked during an interview by a new potential hire is, what are you giving back to your community? So ask that of your company. You might spark a change. The second tip is to look beyond your immediate community, like I did. Remember that there's no us and them, there's just us. It's our community, it's humanity. We're all connected in this together. While children from low-income communities don't have nearly the same opportunities that we had when we were younger, it's not a level playing field by any means. So the third tip is to reach out to your local nonprofit to identify those schools you can engage with that desperately need stronger community support. The budget cuts and school districts are facing because of the pandemic are unprecedented. A number of Colorado school districts are having to completely cut all support for hands-on science learning materials. One of those nonprofits is STEM Generation that is contributing and supporting those schools. And I'm the founder and executive director for STEM Generation. Denver Metro boasts a strong advanced tech and engineering business sector, while companies in these industries struggle to identify local, skilled, diverse talent pool. We can solve this, equip students with leadership and tech skills that they need to tap into the strong economic opportunities all around them. We can level the playing field together by creating equitable learning opportunities at high-need schools, starting early. Feel free to contact me, Wendy Wempy, on LinkedIn or email through stemgeneration.org. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Wendy. And I just want to remind everyone that if there was any audio problems, especially during that presentation, that these will be posted on YouTube within the next couple of days for you to go back to. And then I'd also like to leave it with Wendy if you'd like to add any final comments or address any questions that came in during the presentation.
All right. So I have one question here from Taylor. How did you get the resources and funds to be able to provide that initial school with the science fair? What are the funding resources for your company now? So I was a research professor at the Colorado School of Mines at the time that I had reached out and supported that initial school. And I served as a volunteer for 6 years at 3 different schools. So there was no funding. It was all volunteer based. I just built it out as to give to my kids' school and then to expand that beyond my kids' school. So we became a nonprofit 2.5 years ago, and our current funding model is strongly focused on engaging the business sector with students during our virtual science and engineering fair that we'll be having in April. But we create a whole support structure that teachers use to support the kids in the classroom to build out their skills in science and engineering. So our current business model is around grants. We're just entered the grant space, but it's largely our sponsors, our corporate sponsors that have supported us so far. Are there any other questions? So another question came in. So there's a comment that was posed in the chat room. I appreciate that. So, and this is an important point, is that these students from low-income communities, they have the same talent, same abilities as any other kid, right? They just haven't been exposed to the same support structure that more affluent communities have right at their fingertips. So this is true for lower income communities, and especially true in rural communities. Just kids don't have access to the same support and same mentorship. You can imagine, you know, at my kids' school, you know, I have a PhD in geophysics. I can help my kids do anything, right? And if I limit my support of to my kids, then I'm just contributing to that inequity in a huge way. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with helping your kids out and supporting your kids' school. I do that. And that's natural to want to do that. But the point that I'm trying to drive home with this is to go beyond your kid's school or go beyond your local neighborhood school, because those are the schools that need it. They don't have the parent support structure that other communities have. So yeah, I encourage you to go beyond. And we have a whole programming around doing that through STEM Generation. And I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Looks like another comment or question came in. So I love this. So how do kids become passionate about a field they didn't know existed? This is exactly it, right? So a lot of these children, they don't necessarily have family members who are in the STEM profession. So this is a lot of what we expose the kids to through the in-class support. They haven't had a lot of exposure to. So we have two programs. One is a support structure in the classroom, and we support the teacher and provide them with full professional development and all the supplies they needed, all the hands-on supplies they needed. The second part of the programming is bringing those kids into a science and engineering fair where we engage them with diverse STEM skilled employees through our sponsors. So that's the exposure, the very critical exposure, because in elementary and middle school, again, it's creating those identities of she's an engineer, I could be an engineer, he's an engineer, I could be an engineer. It goes a long, long way at this age. So yes, so the other question is, are you researching outcomes generating data that demonstrates the benefit of your work? Yes, absolutely. I have a lot of appreciation for metrics and quantifying impact, and that is absolutely part of our programming. Last spring, during the onset of remote learning, we pivoted very hard right along our teachers to build out the remote learning capability of our programming to continue to support them during that time. And as a result, the kids who were engaging in that remote learning platform rated our programming a 4.7 out of 5 for how much fun did you have while doing these projects. It was a very critical way to keep kids engaged at a very difficult time to keep kids engaged. If any of you out there had children that were in the public school system, after 2 weeks, their engagement and their learning tanked. And once the teacher brought in this newly developed remote learning platform to their kiddos, they were super excited to do something fun. And in fact, one student mentioned to the teacher, "Thanks for finally giving us something fun to do." So absolutely, we are very much pay attention to metrics. All right, so it looks like we have time for one more question if there are any questions. So one last question. How do I go beyond and help those lower income areas education systems when I'm not in the education field and not a teacher? I work in cybersecurity, but don't know what to do and how to help. So I recommend reaching out to your local nonprofits that serve. There are a lot of nonprofits that don't strictly serve low-income communities. Where STEM Generation is one of those nonprofits. We only serve schools that serve greater than 50% free and reduced lunch population. So that's basically students living in poverty. So one way to become engaged is through our nonprofit or other nonprofits that offer that type of programming. We engage diverse STEM skilled employees during the kids' science and engineering fairs, and we create that opportunity. So are there any other questions before we wrap it up? I think, so the name of our nonprofit again is STEM Generation. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Wendy, W-E-N-D-Y, Wempy, W-E-M as in Mary, P as in Pete, Paul, E, Wendy Wempy on LinkedIn. You can also find me via email, Wendy, and I'll put it in the chat box, Wendy, W-E-N-D-Y, at sciencefairfun.org. So I just entered my email address in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to engage you in your nearby community and help these kids who really need the help the most. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Wendy. I will just let this video hold for a couple more seconds while people grab your email address there, and then we'll end it for everyone. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate your interest. And thank you, Denver Startup Week. This is just an amazing opportunity.
We appreciate you and all the other session organizers for bringing the content that brings the people to the awesome week. And we'll see everyone tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much.